Was out of necessity?
No.
Like survival?
Nope. Well, I mean, I guess...
Like we have to escape the Germans?
Yeah, we're going to do whitewater rafting to escape the Germans.
What started out as a flee for your life turned into a weekend hobby. Welcome. Oh, here we go. Welcome to the Low Grade Research Podcast. All right. Oh, dude, it's freaking good to be back.
It's good to be back. It's almost as if we haven't just recorded a whole different episode about a different topic.
Well, to the people listening, you don't know if we did or didn't. So be on the lookout for that.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Thanks for being willing to do a doubleheader tonight. I've got kind of a surprise bonus episode that I wanted to record.
That's what you said. I'm kind of excited to... just the impromptiveness excites me.
Yeah. So for you lucky listeners, you will get the episode we released on Tuesday is Euthanasia Roller Coaster, and the episode that you'll get on Thursday, which is outside of our usual release schedule, is Whitewater Rafting.
Oh, dude.
Any guesses? Any shot in the dark why I would choose this particular topic on this particular day?
My first guess is because you watched that Whitewater Rafting movie. You watched Homeward Bound, where the dogs have to get home. There's that scene where they have to cross a river through the whitewater.
I was like, which movie? Every single movie I've seen has a section about whitewater rafting.
Cliffhanger with Sylvester Stallone.
Yep.
Stillvester.
Yep. That really famous whitewater scene in Rocky 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, the movie is called Cliffhanger. A good swim. Or could it be because it's our annual vacation to Jackson Hole, Wyoming to raft the mighty Snake River?
So for you listeners, if you didn't know, Mitch and I are very close friends.
If you didn't pick up on that.
But we're also related, and we've spent our whole lives doing family get-togethers, hanging out, spending time with the family, and doing an annual rafting trip.
Oh my gosh, this is the thing I look forward to the most every year.
Yeah, me too.
It's
easily.
So much fun.
I mark my years by when the river's on its way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Everything I do is in relation to that. And I wish that was a joke, but it's for real. So a little history about that. I mean, we have both of our folks have been doing this for a long time with a few other people, mostly family. But since my dad bought a raft out of high school. Mm-hmm. And they started doing this stuff, and they went with people in their community, and then, it's just become kind of a cherished thing since then.
Yeah. It's almost turned into like a family reunion.
Yeah, 100%.
For some family.
For some family, yeah.
For family that's invited.
A selective family reunion. The best kind of family reunion.
Oh, some of the other family might hear this podcast.
Arguably the least methed out version of a family reunion, if you're going to be honest.
Well, they can't swim. They're on meth. And this is whitewater rafting.
Because they don't have all their teeth. I see.
Yes.
Yeah.
You ingest more water without the teeth to stop it.
Medical fact, yeah. Yep. Okie dokie.
Little teeth science for you.
Yeah, teeth
science. So anyway, that's
science.
this week, and we are excited about it. So we thought we'd do a little mini episode.
Yeah.
A little surprise midweek episode for all of our fans.
Yep, since most of our fans right now are our family members who are also going to be on this trip.
That's right.
Congrats. You're about to learn some smooth facts about whitewater rafting.
Yeah, about the activity you've been doing most of your life.
Yeah, and you didn't know anything about.
But you didn't even know where oars come from.
And we're not going to really talk about that much, so.
And they still won't know.
Yep. Got to keep some things secret. You want to get into it?
Let's dive right in.
Here's
metaphorically speaking.
A quick warning. Quick warning to our listeners. I forgot my laptop charger, and we're recording this. I got 12% on my battery, so
if it seems fast, it's because it is.
And if it seems like it cuts out about 3/4 of the way in, it's because it did.
It's not because we ran out of facts. It's because we ran out of power.
Yep. We're never going to run out of facts, but we are weak. Anyway, whitewater rafting. All right, so let's get into it. What is it? So it's got a little bit more. Sometimes we run across a topic where you get into it and it's way more interesting than you thought it was going to be.
Sure.
This is something we've done so much throughout our life. It wasn't more interesting than I thought it was going to be. It was pretty much exactly as interesting as I thought it was going to be.
So none of it surprised you.
Yeah, really none of it. Also, there was some good information about. I never really looked at like the different classes of whitewater.
Sure.
So that was really interesting. There's some surprising history about the origins of whitewater rafting.
Mm-hmm. Was that out of necessity?
No.
Like survival?
Nope. Well, I mean, I guess.
Like we have to escape the Germans?
Yeah, we're going to do whitewater rafting to escape the Germans.
What started out as a flee for your life turned into a weekend hobby. At some point during your research of this, were you reading it and just like, I know more than you?
Yeah, actually, there were a few times. Because when I write my research for these, I try and stay pretty close to what the article said. Mm-hmm. But there were a few times I just started like writing from my own experience, and I was like,
sure.
It doesn't say that in the article. So we're gonna get that anyway.
You
but
have to cite yourself.
Yeah. Well, and actually, it's funny because usually I link to other pages that are related.
Yeah. And
there's one about there's a Wikipedia page for rafting, also whitewater rafting. But then there's a separate one for raft guide.
Oh.
And we'll get into it, but the whole thing reads like some commercial raft company wrote it for part of their orientation to make people read. Like it's
sure.
very strange.
Sure.
But even there's like a notice at the top of the article that says, this article's tone or style does not reflect the encyclopedic tone in Wikipedia. This article needs additional citations for verification. This article possibly contains original research. So that's going to be this whole episode.
This article may contain opinions of a guy that lives there.
Opinions that are not shared by the one dude who's written 3/4 of all of Wikipedia,
wow.
which we'll do an episode on at some point. So a whitewater raft, what is it? So it's considered an extreme sport, obviously. It's a recreational activity where people generally speaking, they use inflatable rafts to navigate a river.
Checks out.
Pretty simple. And that's the episode, folks.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for listening to Whitewater Rafting.
You can reach us at hello.otherbrothers.studio. That's not it. hello@otherbrothers.studio.
That's not how emails work.
That's not our email.
If you're curious about whitewater rafting, go try it. What could go wrong?
A lot, actually.
Oh, yeah, maybe don't do that. Let's talk more about it. So the term whitewater refers to rough water, right? So while it's being navigated, it's usually fast-moving water. It has waves, eddies, and strong currents, right? Care to know more?
Yes.
Great. Let's talk about the history. So it became popular around the 1950s is when people started really doing it recreationally. And it kind of started out with what you and I would know as like duckies.
Yeah.
Which is like a two-person raft kind of. So they had little boats that were more like that, like a two-person raft.
Okay.
Which is, for someone trying to conceptualize that, it's like basically an inflatable canoe.
Yeah.
So when I say two-person, it's like sitting front to back kind of. And so they kind of started out with that, and then they shifted into rafts that look a little bit more like what we have today.
I feel like the 1950s was the time when people started to do recreation. You know what I mean?
Sure, I get that.
Like 1800s, we're still like, we really got to focus on growing our own food here.
Yeah, no kidding.
World War I, World War II.
Yep. I mean, in 1800, you're going to go look at the Coney Island fat strong guy. You know what I mean? He's recreating.
Yeah.
Easily. Yeah. He's doing it well, clearly, but nobody else is getting into that.
And then finally,
you're worried about eating lint and drinking sauce to try and stay alive.
I was going to say, sprinkling a little bit of the Great Depression in there.
Sprinkle.
1950s, the
Sprinkle
U.S.
in the worst economic disaster that our country has ever had.
Yeah. Then we hit the 1950s, and the U.S. hits an economic boom.
Yeah. People
have disposable income and something they never had before, free time.
Free time.
So why not go float down a river? Rapids.
Yeah, and plus you get kudos to talk about to other people, so they know that you're better than them.
That's true.
It's kind of the original, I don't know, CrossFit. So
extreme sports.
Yeah.
The original way to let other people know you're better than them.
Too lazy to become a vegan? Try river rafting, friend.
Try extreme sports. All
right, so it kind of goes back. So the first recorded attempt. So this is a little surprising to me, but we have to make a little bit of a distinction. So the first recorded attempt to navigate a river was on the Snake River.
Oh, really?
Which happens to be the river that our families have gone to every year. But there's the part of the Snake River that we run, which is between Alpine, Wyoming and Jackson, Wyoming. And then there's the Snake River Canyon, which is also referred to as Hell's Canyon, which is it's like on the border of Idaho and Oregon.
Right, that one goes into Idaho.
Yeah, so, and it seems from the indication in the article, it seems like the river's quite a bit rougher than the one that we do.
Oh, sure.
And I don't have numbers for that, so don't ask me about it later. I'm not going to do it. If you want to find out more about it, you can look up the article for yourself.
Or go see it for yourself.
Or go see it. Go try it without experience.
Try and let us know.
Yep. So clearly in 1811, people had zero training, experience, or equipment to do any of this. And surprise.
You say 1811?
1811, yeah.
My goodness.
That was the first attempt, right?
They barely had boats.
Yeah, they were barely breathing.
What is this, a boat? What is it?
I don't know much about the early 1800s, but I'm just picturing people are struggling to breathe. Everyone's riding a horse.
Horses don't float. How are we supposed to get down this river?
No kidding. So without training, experience, or equipment, surprisingly, it was deemed too dangerous to navigate.
Go figure.
And the Snake River was nicknamed Mad River.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's a cool name for it.
And which is cool because there's like Mad River commercial rafting tours.
That's right.
That we see all the time when we're out.
That makes a lot more sense now. That's cool.
Even though it's kind of the wrong place, but that's fine. So the first success of navigating the river was led by a dude named Clyde Smith. And they don't give any names for anybody who did it before him, but I guess he was important enough that they included him.
He's the first to survive.
That's probably true.
He's the first to make it to the end and be like, yeah, my name's Clyde, and I did it.
The first journal that hasn't been written by a dead person that did it. They were like, oh,
first journal they found that wasn't waterlogged.
Yeah. So he made his first trip on June 9th, 1940.
Okay.
First successful trip through the Snake River Canyon. So that's the one that's on the border of Idaho and Oregon, right? When hold on, I just messed up his name. Clyde Smith. I don't know where John came from. John Clyde Smith. John Claude Van Damme Clyde Smith.
What an adventurer.
When he went, it would have been on probably a rubber raft, which today they're not really made of rubber. It's made of a few other things. But it would have been like really primitive kind of equipment compared to what it looks like now.
Real raincoat material.
Yeah. Well, or just like straight up like rubber. You know what I mean?
Oh, sure, yeah.
Like going down in a car tire, not even the inner tube. So, you want to talk about equipment?
Let's talk about it.
So, obviously the raft is...
Let me guess. Life jackets.
Life jackets? You want to take another guess?
I'm going to go with oars.
Well, yes and no. Okay. Another one?
And then I'm going to go with water shoes.
I actually do not have anything written about water shoes, weirdly enough, but I'm glad that you'd mentioned it.
Better keep up.
Seems like somebody read the article before me. Because there was 3/4 of it was about water shoes, and I decided for time I would take it out.
Who knew they were so important to sitting down?
Yeah, for life in general. It wasn't even related to rafting. They just talk about general health and well-being.
Want shoes that your feet sweat in, but it's okay?
Written by a Coney Island strongman.
Water shoes.
You ought to be smoking cigars and wearing water shoes if you want to survive, friend. Clearly, the raft is an important piece of equipment, and they kind of have, like everything that is involved in rafting, like as soon as it hit they started out with some equipment that was like kind of existed already.
Sure.
And then that wasn't really meant for that. But then as it became more popular, equipment started to be specialized. It got really high end, really nice materials, like became much better stuff, right?
Yeah.
So rafting kind of started out with old surplus World War II rafts.
Oh, yeah.
They were like straight up vulcanized rubber. So like really similar to like a car tire or something like that.
They could withstand a bullet.
Yeah. There's a reason they were in World War II. And there's a reason they were surplus.
Yeah.
Because they made it. The first raft was like kind of the first credited raft, I guess, of this kind was made in 1843.
Oh, wow.
A long, long time ago. Started as rubber. And then modern rafts now are usually made of like nylon or Kevlar woven plastics like PVC or urethane.
Okay, yeah.
Right? Which is probably closer to what we have. Because it's woven, has like a nice woven cloth inside of the rubber to help maintain structure. So rafts will wildly vary in size. There's really big ones. Our family had a huge, like 15-person raft.
It was huge.
It was massive. It was like bigger, like almost, if we had it perpendicular to the river, there were spots we wouldn't have been able to float through. It was so big. Or they go clear down to like 2 or 3 or 4-person rafts,
yeah,
right?
little 2-man duckies.
In a little 2-man ducky. So, which we're going to take one of those this year.
Oh, let's go.
Yeah, my brother's got one, so that'll be a lot of fun. So they wildly vary in size, but generally the construction is pretty much the same. So you have like inflatable baffles, so like a tube that has been constructed kind of in a rough oval shape that's connected to itself, and it will have like sections that inflate kind of independently.
Yeah.
Which will help it maintain structure and buoyancy if one of them gets punctured, right? And then generally speaking, you'll have 2 kind of center supports or more, 2 or more supports that will kind of hold the structure of the raft, and they kind of bridge the gap between the 2 sides.
Yeah.
Right? And then you'll have rafts that have like, they call them self-bailers, and so they have like an inflatable floor in them. So, and then there's holes along the edges of the inflatable floor. So as water gets in, it will just kind of like drain out and keep itself.
The inflated floor keeps it above the water enough so that water will leak out the bottom.
Yeah. Did you know that already?
I did, yeah.
Weird. Okay.
Well, I saw it happen in real life.
I saw it in this movie I watched.
I saw it at my feet when I was in a boat.
Wow. Original research isn't something that we
we don't do a lot.
We're not proponents of on this podcast. So, or sometimes you have like a non-self-bailing floor, which is what we grew up with. So when water would dump into the raft, you just had poor kids who were freezing with buckets trying to bail it out.
Yeah, that's when you learn about the science of buckets.
Yeah,
and how a bucket works.
I thought you were going to say the science of how hard your dad yells at you when he wants you to do something faster.
Gosh, can't you just hear my dad right now screaming, "Bail, bail, bail! You're throwing it back in the boat, son!
Come on, put your back into it."
All of our siblings and cousins, please write in and tell us something you remember your dad yelling at you on the raft, if we've missed something.
Honestly, it doesn't even have to be related to the raft. Just tell us about a time your dad yelled at you.
Well, I'm talking about this trip, because I know all of my siblings right now are gonna be like, "Oh my gosh, bail, bail, bail!
Paddle, paddle!
You're
paddle.
throwing more into the boat than into the river."
Mm-hmm. There you go.
Hello at otherbrothers.studio.
All right, so in terms of paddles, materials vary, again, wildly. Sometimes they're made of wood, plastic, aluminum, carbon fiber, other kind of high-end composites, right?
Fiberglass?
Probably, yeah. The cheap ones are generally made of aluminum and plastic. And in parentheses, I wrote ours. Because they are.
Oh, those are the ones that are always bent in the middle.
Oh, yeah. For the guy that paddled too hard and weirdly bent it.
Tries to holds it at a weird spot where the force of paddling bends it weird.
Yeah.
Or tries to push off a rock and just bends the paddle.
Which is,
idiots.
I would argue that the cheaper paddles are probably better, especially for the application we use them for.
Totally.
Because they're going to get banged up and you don't want to be spending big money on carbon fiber paddle. I don't even know if they make those for this kind of rafting.
Who knows, man?
A paddle generally has 3 parts. There's a single blade at the end. So, think of a paddle or an oar. It's that leafed out wider portion at the bottom.
The part that goes in the water.
The part that goes in the water. This is the part that stirs the water, as your dad would say. Big proponent of stirring water, your dad.
Yes, he is.
Then there's a shaft that comes off the blade, and then there's a T-grip at the top. And the T-grip is exactly what it sounds like the letter T. So there's a nice handle for you to hold on your one hand.
Yep.
Right?
If you don't get it, we're not going to explain it further.
Yeah, look it up, honestly. Oars. You've talked about oars so much already.
I've been asking about them.
You honestly asked about them way more and sooner than I thought you were going to.
Oh, he's really getting ahead of me.
Dang it. That's most of my content. Most of my content's water, shoes, and oars. What are we going to talk about now? Oars are longer. They're usually made from the same materials as paddles, no surprise, but they generally have interchangeable parts, so you can upgrade them a little easier.
Oh, so that's the main difference?
Well, yeah, and they're kind of the application's different too.
Okay.
So, and we're talking about Wikipedia, so the level of expertise on this topic is probably wanting a little bit, but according to the article, oars are better for wider or flatter parts of a river.
All right.
So you can get up to speed and maneuver a little bit better during those.
Okay.
And oars are generally, and I say generally, but they're always, I don't know why I wrote generally, they're always connected to the raft through some kind of a metal frame that sits into the raft.
Oh, okay. So that's kind of the main difference between an oar and a paddle.
Yeah, and they and I'm not going to go into it, but they generally connect in two different ways. So like you have the raft, and then there's a metal frame that sits into it and is lashed to the raft. And then people will often put like seats on there, or coolers or whatever. Like those for pack rafting is usually a little bit more applicable.
They're pretty slick.
And sometimes there'll be a seat for the person who's the rudderman is on the back, the person steering the raft. But the oars will be held in either by pins and clips or oar locks. And so it's just I'm not going to go into two different methods to keep them on there. And depending on the application and how rough your water is, you'll use one over the other kind of.
Totally.
So paddles versus oars. So paddles are generally used on low volume rivers. Low volume meaning there's going to be more rocks and hazards and stuff. Because paddles are generally shorter, and so there's less damage that they're going to do. And paddles aren't locked in like oars are. So if you got big, huge oars and you're not paying attention, it's much easier to bang them up because you can't just lift them out of the water as easy.
You're going to clang into some stuff.
You're going to clang in. Or if you're doing if you're guiding a commercial trip, you might clang somebody, depending on how bad they are. Ooh. Maybe not, though, because they're getting, like $120 a head on those commercial rafts?
Something like that.
Yeah,
enough to replace a paddle.
You're not clanging anybody. So oars are generally better for higher volume rivers that don't have as many hazards. And then one of the nice little tidbits was that paddles are seen as more engaging for passengers on the raft to enjoy their trip.
Oh. So it's just to keep us entertained.
Yeah, like... starting to think this is useless.
Oh my!
All these years of your dad saying you're stirring the water.
My dad's been lying.
That's all we were ever really required to do. It turns out
to keep my ADHD brain entertained. You're helping so much, son.
Yeah.
Just patronizing me for the last 30 years.
Quick time check. We started with 12% battery, and we're 20 minutes in, and we're now at 6%. So
let's go.
I'm worried this isn't going to work out.
Doing it.
All right. So we're going to talk about classes of whitewater.
Yes. This is the one that I know the least about, and I'm probably the people listening will know the least about.
Me too.
Everyone knows what a paddle is.
Yeah, 100%. And a raft.
But now you know more.
Or water. Yeah, give me a break. And a rock. Water
Ever
shoes.
heard of water?
Water shoes, though. That was rough. I'm glad we covered that. So, yeah, like you, I mean, we've run this river. Well, we've run the Snake River almost every year.
Yeah.
Since
collectively,
I mean, our parents have done it longer than we've been born.
Yeah, hundreds and hundreds of times.
Yeah. So, and this is something that we engage with every single time we go, but I've never bothered to look it up, right?
Yeah.
So it's class 1 through 6.
Okay. I thought it just went to 5.
Me too, but kind of it does, and you'll see why.
Okay.
So class 1 is generally very small, rough areas and very slight maneuvering required. It's not really a danger to swimmers. It would be considered basic level.
Okay.
Right? Understood?
Clear as water.
Great. Class 2 is going to be a little bit rougher water. There might be some rocks, might require a little bit of maneuvering. We'd call that novice.
Okay, sure.
Maybe a little bit more risk to somebody just swimming in the water, right? We could bump up to class 3. There's going to be small waves, maybe small drops. Not really any considerable danger, but we'll call that intermediate.
Sure. You probably don't want to swim in it.
Probably wouldn't want to swim in that.
Okay.
Or you'd want to be pretty careful if you're swimming in it.
Sure.
And then class 4 is whitewater.
Okay.
So medium waves, there's probably rocks, there's probably considerable drops. You'll need sharp maneuvering. This is advanced.
Okay.
Right? So the last two get a little crazy. So class 5 is whitewater. It has large waves, large volume, large rocks, large hazards, large drops, very precise maneuvering. This would for sure not be something you would want to swim in at all.
No.
And it's considered expert. You need like an expert mastery of river rafting.
You got to know what you're doing.
Got to know what you're doing. So 1 through 5 is kind of it, right? They do class 6 in there, which is a little bit poorly named because I read a little bit more past the Wikipedia article because they didn't go into classes in the article so much,
Sure.
but I knew that I wanted to talk about it.
That's an important part.
Yeah. So class 5 is kind of considered the top, and then they've even made like 5.1 and 5.2 and 5 point whatever for different specific rapids. But class 6 is considered so dangerous, it's considered unnavigable in a reliably safe way.
Yeah.
Right. So it's substantial whitewater, huge waves, huge hazards, substantial drops, severe impacts, and dramatically increased risk of injury or death.
So we're talking like waterfalls, essentially.
Yeah. Like even in all the stuff I read, it wrote that this is an expert level, but it's also considered exploratory. And even with an expert mastery of whitewater rafting, there's zero guarantee that you're going to make it out and be okay.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that it's that dangerous. And there's not really places that, I mean, especially now, whitewater rafting has been a sport for long enough. That's not really the places that have been explored and kind of conquered, so to speak, have largely been done. You're not going to be going out. The places that are left that would be considered class 6 are not places you're going to want to go.
That makes sense.
Unless you're, I don't know, you want to go out with a bang, I guess. All right. So what about Snake River?
What about it?
Well, I decided this is not part of the article either, but since it's something that we care deeply about, I thought this is going to be probably less interesting for the listener, but I've always considered the part of the river we run to be, I've always heard that was class 4, some of these rapids. And there's a few big ones. I think that AmericanWhitewater.org puts there's 16 rapids that are named on that section of the Snake that we run.
Interesting.
But there's really 8 or 9 ones that you and I would commonly know, and that people that run it would kind of commonly know.
That seems like a lot more than the names that I'm thinking of different spots.
Yeah. So generally speaking, the Snake River is a class 2 or 3.
For the whole thing?
For the whole
collectively?
thing.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And then during spring runoff, it can get up to 4 or maybe higher than a 4.
Okay.
And that's when you have tons and tons of water flowing through there.
Yeah.
Right?
And it's fast.
So I've got a list of the 9 main ones. For the sake of the listener, I'm not going to read them all off, but a couple of them I thought you might find interesting.
Yeah.
So on the Snake, there's a few really big rapids. There's one called Haircut Rock, which if you're going to guess the name is correctly named, a lot of people get smacked into that rock. It's where this current goes against this rock wall and then sharply turns with the river, but the current continues forward into this massive boulder on the other side of the river.
Yes.
And that one's a class 3.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. And then you get Big Kahuna, which is the largest rapid on the river, generally speaking.
Time of year, it's usually the largest one.
And that one can be a class 3 or more. So that one will get big.
So it can reach class 5 status.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Very cool.
And Lunch Counter is the one. So it goes Big Kahuna, which is like a really big, kind of almost one big wave.
Yeah, you drop, legit 6 feet into this hole.
Yeah, and then you just get pummeled with maybe an 8 or a 10-foot wave.
It's incredible.
On the high you get is unbelievable. So, so that's Big Kahuna. So that can get really big. Right after Big Kahuna, each bank of the river is very rocky, and then it kind of closes in. It gets narrower, and so it's very choppy. They call that Lunch Counter, and that's generally a class 3.
Okay.
So they made the distinction that the Big Kahuna can get bigger than a class 3, but Lunch Counter can't, which I think is a little bit counterintuitive to what we grew up knowing. So who knows? And then the last one that I think that you find interesting is there's a section of that river where it goes, it's kind of regularly choppy, and then there's a big rapid, and then you get into this part of the river called Champagne, and it's called that because it's very deep right there, and all these little air bubbles bubble up to the surface just like a glass of champagne. It's super calm, very deep. We generally do a lot of cliff diving there, jumping off the raft, that kind of a thing. But the rapid that takes you from the shallower part of the river into Champagne is considered a class 3 rapid right there too.
Really?
Yeah. Which, if I were to compare between those and the really big ones on that river, I don't think I would have called it a class 3.
No, not at all.
I suppose it depends.
Based on the descriptions you gave earlier, I would have called that, the scale that was going through my mind was I would have called that one a class 3, and then for sure called the other ones you mentioned, like Big Kahuna and Lunch Counter, a 4 or 5 easily.
Yeah.
So that does surprise me when you say that those big ones that we go through where people are thrown from the raft because the water is so...
And their whole raft flips over.
Yeah. That's like a 3.
Yeah. And it's the same as this
other one.
On most
days, it's a 3, yeah.
And I'm not saying the one that goes into Champagne is not... I mean, it's a good ride.
Sure, it's not nothing,
it's not
I think I've stood up through it.
Yeah, I think you have. I think you've ridden the front of the raft through that.
I've Captain Morgan to the front of the raft through that thing.
So there's a list of the other ones, and maybe off mic I'll tell you what the other ones are, so we don't, because I'm sure we've already lost half of the people that are listening to this. And for the sake of time, because we're now at 2% battery on my laptop.
Oh, yeah.
So let's buzz through this. So safety. In terms of safety on a river, it's come a long way. right?
Oh,
If
yeah.
you're smart, generally speaking, that will get you there. And because equipment has come a long way now, that if you just use the right equipment and you keep your head about you, it's really unlikely you're going to have an incident. And all the advancements in equipment have made river rafting way more accessible to like DIY rafters.
Oh, sure.
Which we would be considered as, right?
Yeah.
So there's kind of the commercial side of things. You're going to go pay to have a guide take you down, and then what our family has always done, which is let's take our own raft and get after it. Right?
How hard could it be?
How hard could it be? We're a little bit better off than that, but maybe not.
Fair enough.
Maybe not much. Commercial rafting companies will require a waiver, but generally speaking, commercial or not, trips usually begin with some kind of a safety briefing, and you go over, especially for new people, then you go over kind of dangers and stuff to look out for, how to use your equipment properly, right? And that's all really important to keeping people safe. There's also, depending on the state that the river's in, there's legal requirements. So life jackets are generally required, and some kind of a throwable rescue device is legally required.
Okay, sure. And that's stuff we usually carry on our raft.
Yeah, so we have like a bag that has a coiled rope in it with one end, the uncoiled end of it attached to the raft. So you can throw the bag out into the water and it will uncoil the rope as it goes if we need to catch somebody and save them. And life jackets, if you're looking for a life jacket to do this type of thing, it will generally be a type 3 or a type 5. And type 5 is usually associated with whitewater. And if you go on like a commercial trip, it'll be a type 5 jacket that you'll get. All right, makes sense?
It's all making sense.
I was going to talk a little about injuries, and I won't, because you'll get all the injuries that you can imagine you'll get. I don't even know why I took the time to write that down.
Lacerations.
But I did want to say
contusions, concussions,
a sore foot, a sore neck, a sore
ego,
throat is what I was trying to say. I don't know why I said you might get a sore neck. Deaths.
Oh.
So they're super rare.
Very interesting.
Even in commercial or DIY rafting, it's generally about, and it's like hard to measure this, but it's like 0.5 deaths per 100,000 people.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's so few.
0.5 to 0.8. But even still, that's like
few.
one person for every 200,000 people dies.
That's funny you say that, because we actually both have separate family that are from the area that we go, and they've told me multiple times that the locals won't go on the river that we do every year because someone always dies every year.
Yeah.
So they always have a story, but that's fascinating that it's so few.
The one that I always heard was like my dad's dad worked with the Forest Service or something. Man, I'm going to butcher this. My dad's going to listen to this and tell me I'm dumb, but that's fine. But we knew somebody on our side of the family that had worked for the Forest Service, the Rangers, and they like had underwater cameras and stuff in there. And the things they saw under there made them never want to ride ever.
Interesting.
Which, who knows? But all right. So I'll be quick because now I'm down to 1% battery. I don't want to lose this episode.
We're going to do this.
But I'll talk for 2 seconds about environmental impact. So there's good and bad. Generally, it's a proponent of environmentalism because people are going out and enjoying nature.
Yeah.
But there have been some times where commercial companies will work with local governments, municipalities to like alter a river to make it more exciting. And so that's kind of frowned upon for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
And lastly, there was a whole page dedicated just for raft guides that I talked about at the top of the episode. But in parentheses, I wrote raft guides had its own page, which contains original research. And it reads like a company wrote it as part of an employee onboarding. And it even says like, an important part of the job is delivering the safety talk. Before a trip, raft guides brief customers on potential hazards. Like it just goes on just like that. So anyway, it's a little
exactly
ridiculous.
what it is.
Yeah, and they probably do that actually, but who knows? So that's it, man. That's rafting.
Well, that's cool.
There's a couple other really cool pages you should check out if you're in the neighborhood of Wikipedia. There is Swiftwater Rescue, which looked really cool. Pack rafting, which also looked like a cool one.
That's cool.
And then whitewater canoeing, I would recommend as well.
That would be wild.
Which I'm never going to try because that sounds super dangerous. But so there you have it.
Oh, cool. Well, hopefully you guys got something cool out of that, especially for people that have some experience doing this type of stuff.
Yeah. I hope so too. And for me and you and for any of our family that might listen, we're excited to see you next week. It's going to be a good time, and I hope that we're all safe and we have a great time.
Yeah. There's gonna be a quiz at the campsite. Hope you listened.
If you have any suggestions you want to throw our way, things about the podcast, future episodes, things you didn't like, feel free to send us an email to hello@otherbrothers.studio. And if you want to find out more,
you can reach out to us through our Instagram at Low Grade Research Pod. Send us a message, like our photos, all the above.
All right, buddy. I'll see you next week.
Hey, talk to you later.